Hello guys, so welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial I will be dealing with the monster in C programming that has been tormenting us, and that is Betty, right? As people will call it, Auntie Betty. So today we are dealing with Betty, and so you need to pay all the attention you can. All right, so let's just overcome this once and for all. Now, so what is Betty? Simply, Betty documentation is just a style of coding that enables you to write clean code. All right, so it enables you to write clean code such that your codes are very readable. So when I carry a code, I should be able to understand what you are writing about or what your code simply is about. Okay, so we're going to be looking at number one, white space. Betty, we always tell you white space. We're going to be looking at what white space is all about. We're also going to be looking at no description for return statement. We're going to be looking at no description also for function parameter. We are also going to be looking at the correct pasting method. All right, and lastly, we'll also be looking at comments, the proper comments, the proper way to make comments on Betty. So these are all the things we are going to be looking at. Now, let's just dive in at once. I don't want us to spend so much time in this video. I want to make it as simple as possible, but detailed as it can be, and straight to the point, so that you also get what you need to get really fast. Okay, now let's create a file and just call this file let's say Betty test.c. all right, so let's call this file Betty test.c, and let's just create a simple C file. So all right, and then let's call our function standard function. So I'm trying to just create the code normally the way you're supposed to create your code, and here let me just say printf hello world, right? And then let me return 0, right? And then let's run this and see if this will work. So gcc betty.c. So our code has been compiled. That means our code will run. So we should have hello world. A.out. Yeah, so hello world. Let's put the new line character so that we're able to see that clearly. Yeah. So /n. Let's compile again and run our code. Okay, so hello world, right? So you see that our code has compiled, so that means our code is okay. All right, but if you look at our code doesn't really look okay. No description. Our curly braces is the same where we have the function. We don't have parentheses covering our return statement. All right, so but our code still can run, right? But it doesn't really look cool. No description for what we are doing, what the code is all about. So let's run Betty on this file and see. As much as this code will run and give us the results, let's run Betty on this file and see what Betty is going to say. So Betty has a whole lot to say. All right, so this is where the issue comes, because Betty wants you to write clean codes. So let's look at it. Number one, Betty is saying that the int main function should probably be int main void, right? Open brace, following function declaration go on the next line. Space required before the open brace. Parentheses are required on the return statement. All right, and then warning, no description found for function main. So you see that Betty has a lot of complaint now. All right, so this is where we need to fix our code properly for Betty to allow us go. Number one, we need to write our comment. And how do you write comment in Betty? This is the syntax of writing comment for Betty. All right, so move to the next line, and then we'll say, we'll pick the main function space hyphen, and then we just describe our main function. You can say main function of the code. All right, just something like that. And then the return statement, the arrow must be in capital letters, and it must have column, not hyphen. And let's just say always 0, and we can end our code, our comment this way. So this is the proper way to write your function comment. Yeah, so the comment, you see the main function, and then the return statement. Remember, the return statement must start with arrow and must end with this column. This can go with the hyphen. All right, and then you end your comment here. Now Betty says that this opening parentheses curly braces should be on the next line, something like this. And then Betty also said that this should be int main void, right? Void. And one more complaint, that this should be in between parentheses. All right, but let's just ignore and see first and see what Betty is going to say. We fixed about how many things. Let's see, enter. Let's see what Betty is going to complain. So you say parentheses are required on the return statement. So that is the only thing we need to fix. So let's go ahead and fix that. Here we just have to put the parentheses here. All right, and here, and then let's save and exit. So Betty should be fine now, and now Betty should be fine. So you see that Betty is fine now. All right, now you need to know how to fix this, and one of the areas you need to concentrate on is the number. So you see that it will tell you, Betty will tell you where the issue is. Now for instance, if you are working on, now you see that my editor already has got numbering. Yeah, so if I go to my VI, I already set the numbering. So you see I've got numberings here. But if you are working, let's copy this code. So if you are working on a terminal that doesn't have numbering, how do you do this? So I'm going to show you that, because Betty, now if you check, Betty will always tell you where you have issues, either line 4, either line 10, line 11. So for you to know which line you're working on, rather than saying 1, 2, 3, 4 and start to count, what if you have like 10, 20, 40, 50 lines of code? All you need to do is to set number. So let me show you how you can do that, and let's use this. So for this, let me say vi Betty doc.c, enter. So here you see there's no numbering. So if I begin to type now, you see no numbering, yeah. So let me show you how we can set that. First, let's okay, so this is from what I copied, and it came with the numbers. But let's delete this. Let's just quickly write this code all over again. I just want to show us how to number this. So let's just write this code all over again. So arch include stdio.h, yeah. So int main void, right? And then let's just go ahead and say printf. Let's say hello world, and then let's say return. Yep. All right, so now we have this, okay? We have this. Now, how do we now set numbers? Look, if by the time we compile this now, you see that we don't have numbering. So for you to set your number, if Betty complains about your code, for you to know which line Betty is complaining about, all you need to do is to tap your escape key. Once you tap your escape key, hit column, and then you say set number. So you can see it, column, set number. Before you can do that, you need to first hit your escape key, then set number, hit enter. Now it will set numbers for you, and you'll be able to know the line that Betty is complaining about, right? So if you go on insert mode now, whatever you type now, it comes with number. All right, but if you exit, you will need to set number again for you to be able to see that. So I just wanted to show us that so that you know when Betty is complaining about a particular number, you know what to do about it. Okay, let's go ahead and save this code. Let's check Betty again. Okay, let's check Betty again. So Betty is perfectly fine with our code, and our code can still run the way we want it to run, right? It can still run exactly the way we want it to run. So if you compile our code and we try to run our code again, our code will still run hello world. Okay, so let's clear our screen. Now the next thing we want to look at is white spaces. So let's do something and see what Betty is going to say. So here I am just going to create some spaces. Okay, so I'm going to create some spaces using the space bar, right? I'm just going to create a space here using the space bar, and I'm going to create a space here, like 2 spaces here, or maybe 1 space using the space bar. So here I have a space here, and then here before the printf, I have some spaces here. So let's exit and run Betty and see what Betty is going to say. Yeah, so now Betty is saying, warning, please no spaces at the start of a line and trailing white spaces. So line 9 and line 10. Betty is saying, please no spaces at the start of a line, and then it says trailing white spaces. So like I say, trailing white spaces in C programming or Betty styling is simply those spaces that you create with your tab. So you see, this is trailing white space. Those spaces you create with your tab, they are called trailing white space. So Betty wants you, sorry, I said tab, with your space bar. So you see, Betty doesn't want you to create spaces with a space bar. Betty wants you to create space with tab. So hit the tab key on your keyboard if you want to create space, and Betty is okay, not with your space bar on your keyboard. So now we can shift this here, and Betty will not complain. Let's also remove these white spaces. After our work, just use the backspace key to delete this white space. All right, so now no white space again. You see, it's not moving beyond this. So now, as much as this is here, Betty is not going to complain because these are tabs, you see. So if we run Betty on this code now, Betty will be perfectly fine. All right, you see, Betty is fine, no complaints. But if that was to be spaces created using the space bar on your keyboard, then Betty is going to complain about white spaces. All right, so that is how you can work with white spaces. And make sure whenever Betty is complaining about white spaces, please always look at the line. The line number is very important, and then look at that line properly. Check the beginning of the line, check the ending of the line to see that there are no white spaces, right? For instance, let's do this again. Let's do this again. So here we're going to, you see there's no space here, yeah? No space here. But we can also have like space after your code, something like that. And Betty is also going to complain about that. So if we save and exit now and run Betty, Betty is going to complain about trailing white spaces. And it says it's in line 9. So let's see line 9. Line 9, all right. And here you can see that this is line 9. And there's no space at the beginning of the line, but there is space after the code. So you have to use your backspace to remove the spaces. And now if you compile your code and run your code with Betty, check your code with Betty, Betty should be fine. All right. Now, lastly, before we go on this particular video, let me show you how you can document your code when you have parameters to work with. All right, very, very important when you have function parameters to work with. So let's VI into our file again that we've been using. Here we're going to tweak our function a bit. So instead of having void, let's tweak our function and say int a comma int b, right? So let's say we have two function parameters to work with here, right? And let's just save this and see. Let me clear the screen. Now if you run Betty on this file, Betty is going to warn you, all right, saying warning, no description found for parameter or member A, warning, no description found for parameter or member B. So what this means is that, you know, in ALS, once it's warning, your code is not going to compile. What this means is that Betty wants you to describe these parameters in your comments. He wants you to describe, or she wants you to describe these parameters in your comment, your function parameters. And how do you describe your function parameters? You describe them this way. All right, so let's say at A with the column space, you can just say anything. You can say function parameter 1, right? Now watch this. I am going to use, say, I'm just going to say B, and then I will say function parameter 2, right? Okay, now here look at the way we write our comment for this parameter. Look at the way we write our comment. Let's save and exit, and you see what Betty is going to say. So Betty is saying that no description found for parameter B. Why? Because we did not write it the exact way Betty wants us to write it. You see the way we write for parameter A, Betty wants us to write it the same way for parameter B. If we decide to put this, if we decide to put this and remove this column and say let's use hyphen now, check Betty. You see, Betty is still complaining because we did not write it the proper way. So you must follow Betty's guideline, Betty's documentation for writing your function parameter, which is using @ and then the column. All right, so now Betty should be fine with our documentation. All right, so Betty is fine with our documentation. Oh yeah, running the code myself. So let's run clear. Okay, so let's run that again. Whoa. All right, so you see that Betty is fine with our documentation now. All right, so that is how you can work with your functions parameter and then whatever the function name is, you have to work with it. For instance, if we change the name of our function to from main, let's say we change it to add rather than main, right? Add rather than main. So because you can also create your own functions. If we run Betty on this file, Betty is going to complain warning no description found for function add, right? So whatever the function name is, you need to make sure that you describe that function that you are using. So rather than using main, we have to use add now. So if we check now, Betty should be fine because we've included add to our function. Very important. All right, so you need to make sure that you describe the function name, you need to describe the function parameters, you need to also describe the function return statement that you are using. And also don't forget white spaces. Betty doesn't like white spaces. Always make sure you remove all the spaces around your code using the backspace, and if you need space, use your tab key to provide spaces to make your code clean enough for Betty to see. And don't forget your semicolon at each point when you write your code for Betty to see. And your curly braces should always come after your function. So you should always write your curly braces after your function. Very important, because Betty wants to see those curly braces, so they should always come after your function. If you write your curly braces on the same line with your function, then Betty is not going to be happy with you writing the code that way. All right, so you must always make sure you write your curly braces after the function, right? So as even when you are writing maybe like your conditional statement, your or your conditional statement, your if statement, or your loops, you must always make sure that your curly braces comes after you've written your condition, such that Betty will not complain. So what do I mean? Just before we go, let's just do something. So let me do this quickly. Let's just write a simple code here. All right, let's say int I. All right, and let's just write a simple loop for I is equals to, let's say 1 equals to 1, and I is let's say less than or equals to 10, right? Equals to or less than 10, and then I plus plus. Okay, so just something very basic, I plus plus, and let's do this. Okay, so here, now that we've written our code, if you want to write like a condition to this code, what Betty is saying is that you shouldn't write your condition on the same line where you have this, your curly braces on the same line where you have this. It has to come down. All right, your curly braces has to come down, not on the same line where you have this. All right, basically that's what Betty is saying, that it has to come down, it has to be on a different line. Okay, that's exactly what Betty is talking about. So I hope you've been able to learn something, and this should help you go a long way in ALS and try to solve your Betty issues. Thank you for joining, and thank you for staying tuned to the end. See you in my next video. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to like and leave a comment. Bye for now.